Mayor, good morning. Want to get your comments on the Department of Justice investigation that we learned about yesterday. You've had your back and forths with the president over the months, and I'm wondering if you could have forecasted this to be a focal point of his Department of Justice and what your initial reaction was to the investigation.
Well, I'm not surprised, right? I mean, this administration has, obviously has demonstrated a great deal of animus and disdain towards what is sensible about our country, and that's the diversity of our country. And I'm very proud of the fact that we have one of the most, if not the most diverse administration in the history of Chicago. What's clear is that not only does the Trump administration not respect the rule of law or what's sensible about our society, you would be hard pressed to find qualified individuals who are in his administration. As my administration reflects the country, reflects the city, his administration reflects the country club. And that is the biggest difference between what we're doing in Chicago and what is coming from the federal government. We're going to remain firm and steadfast in our commitment to ensure that the incredible diverse talent that we have within our administration that continues to lead us towards the safest, most affordable big city in America, we're not going to shy away or apologize for who we are.
Were you surprised?
No. Look, it's clear that this administration does not respect the rule of law. It's also clear that this administration is more interested in creating division within our country while we are being inclusive. Proud of the fact that we have individuals that have legal backgrounds, operational backgrounds, education backgrounds. I mean, when I think about, again, just the diversity of my administration, we're working hard every day to make sure that the values of my administration reflect the uniqueness of the city of Chicago. And we're doing that. And that's what the people of this country, that's what they really want. This divisive tactic that this administration is just dead set on engaging in, I'm confident that the goodwill of people, everyday people who are approaching me about how we can create more opportunities for young people, right? Approaching me about how we build more affordable homes. Again, April, the fewest amount of homicides since 1962, as violence continues to go down and our investments continue to go up. That's what everyday working people in this city are concerned with, and that's what I'm concerned with, and that's what I'm addressing.
Final question. Does it feel retaliatory? And secondly, do you have any sense of how much this could cost the city of Chicago to sort of handle it, to defend it, to respond, man hours, et cetera?
I mean, the cost if we don't defend our democracy could be quite severe. Here's what my approach has always been. It's about making sure that the city moves in the direction that benefits the wholeness of our city. Now, look, no one is going to argue, not here in Chicago, that we have lacked fairness and equity in this city. That's evident by the numbers tell us that. And it's not just with contracting and opportunities to do business with the city. It's the fact that, again, there was a report that was released. The Urban League of Chicago is leading solutions around closing the economic gap between neighborhoods, where, again, the average cumulative wealth of a black family in Chicago was $0. I would imagine that no matter who you are, that you would recognize that that's a problem. And if we're talking about how we build safe communities, if Austin isn't safe, then Streeterville can't be safe, right? And so we have to make sure that we're not falling victim to the tyranny that's coming from the federal government. We're uniting people. All of the city of Chicago is surrounded by the love and the aspirations that are coming from my administration. Look, I take a great deal of pride and humility that I was elected just 2 years ago to respond to decades of disinvestment, that they trust a working class individual to to bring people together. And so when we're investing in our public schools, that investment is for all of our neighborhoods across the city. When crime is going down, that affects all of us in this city. When we're building more affordable homes, that's affecting all of us in this city. And that's what this moment is about. And we're not going to be intimidated and struck by fear because we're showing up in our best form. And that's who we are as a city of broad shoulders. We stand shoulder to shoulder. We stand elbow to elbow to make sure that we can build the safest, most affordable big city in America.
Hi, Mayor. How are you today?
I'm doing terrific.
Good. I want to pivot back to curfews for a second. Before, you previously have said you do not support curfews or you had some opposition to it. So I wonder, with this revised curfew ordinance, where you stand on it, and just like what would your reaction be should it pass out of committee today?
Well, my position is that I do not support lowering the curfew because there's no evidence that lowering curfews prevents violence from happening, right? And so every study has substantiated that as well. Here's my position. The City Council moves forward with an ordinance that gives my administration and the police department the ability to implement a curfew. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm not concerned about the constitutionality around it. Here's what my ultimate goal is to prevent them from happening, these large gatherings. And the work that we have done has done that in large part. One is one too many. But my main priority and focus is making sure that we don't just simply figure out how to prevent these gatherings from happening, but that we're working together collectively to provide safe spaces for young people to have an experience in Chicago that they should be able to enjoy. It's their right. You heard directly from our young people today. They want to be in safe spaces where they can be themselves. That's what my mission has been. If we don't give young people real activity, we don't help them find their purpose, we're just going to find ourselves in a tailspin. This is about not just prevention, but this is also about the investments. And that's why I'm very much focused on giving youth voices power, but also that we're responding with resources as well.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
You campaigned on a promise to ban no-knock warrants being served by the Chicago Police Department. The police department is about to finalize a policy that would not ban no-knock warrants and would also allow Chicago police officers in extreme circumstances to point weapons at children. Is that policy acceptable to you?
Well, we're still having conversations with aldermanic leaders as well as organizers, and particularly Ms. Anjanette Young, around what an ordinance will look like that would ultimately prevent what happened to her from ever happening again. My position is still very clear. I do believe that we have to have significant shift in policy to ensure we have maximum security for our residents. And look, the work that we're doing to lower violence and crime in the city of Chicago is obviously showing up for all of Chicago, and we'll continue to have these conversations and continue to go through our paces of negotiations to ensure that what happened to Ms. Anjanette Young doesn't happen again, or to other families that have experienced these type of encounters.
Since the botched raid on Anjanette Young's house, the number of residential search warrants served by the Chicago Police Department has decreased by 85%. Is that an indication, do you think, that there were hundreds, if not thousands, of search warrants that did not need to be served, that were served and primarily impacted Black Chicagoans based on the data?
I've always said from the very beginning that we have to have constitutional policing and move with some expediency around responding to the consent decree. I appreciate the leadership that Superintendent Snelling has brought to the police department with better training, but also looking at particular policies and procedures that are either antiquated or perhaps some semblance of racial profiling. We're a different city now. We're transforming this city in a way that I believe that those who have fought to get us to this point have always longed for. It's our generation's time, all of us, to have stronger and safer communities, but also to ensure that we don't have the type of policing that has led to the unprecedented amount of settlements that we've had to deal with. So this is really more of a reflection of the values that I ran on to ensure that we have a police department that the people of Chicago can trust.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
The city has spent time and resources on dozens of plea deals or trials that the city has lost to prosecute protesters arrested during the DNC for municipal code violations, like failing to disperse, that carry no jail time. In one trial, in his verdict, the judge said the city has not provided, even by the low burden of more likely than not, that a defendant could hear proper dispersal orders from CPD, and found the defendant not guilty. Does that give you confidence in the police department to adequately notify teens, as the city council considers the curfew proposal, of curfews and dispersals?
Look, the most important thing that we have to keep in mind is that we want to prevent violence in the city of Chicago. That is what the motivation is. You know, as far as, you know, how the city has practiced over years and how it approaches certain aspects of arrest, there's no secret here that we're working to sharpen and to, you know, clear matters up so that we're not wasting time or money. As far as my confidence in our ability to work collectively together to ensure that our teens have activity and that we're working to prevent violence from happening, of course I'm going to remain confident. Do I have concerns? Of course I do. You know, but you know, the historic nature of what we're confronting is going to take all of us collectively to ensure that we are addressing and approaching this matter in the fullness of all of the experiences that the people of Chicago have had. So, you know, yes, confidence, and we still move with caution and as well as with some level of accountability.
And can you comment on the city continuing to pursue prosecutions for these municipal code violations? Why does the city feel it's important to pursue those?
Well, look, these have been practices, you know, over time, and we're going to continue to review those practices.
Mariah, can we keep going just because there's a lot of people here? Sorry. Go to Craig. Yeah, and then we'll come to Taman.
Hello, Mayor.
Hello.
First, I want to ask, with regards to the young people, does the city have enough resources to make sure that there are alternatives and safe places for the young people who may need them?
Well, we've invested, my administration, I've invested millions of dollars into our young people, and you know, our budget director could go into some precise examples if that pleases you. But whether it's, again, for youth employment, whether it's for our youth commission, whether it's supporting our community-based organizations so that they can provide activity for young people, whether it's investing in our public education system, these resources are significant. If you're asking me if we need more resources, the answer is absolutely yes. Right? I mean, look, we have an opportunity to hire 29,000 young people. Our Deputy Mayor Humphreys could tell you this. Last year we had 50,000 young people apply. So the demand is certainly there. We do need more resources.
Did you want to say anything, Budget Director?
I mean, the mayor is absolutely correct. I mean, you know, not only is it city resources that are supporting youth opportunities, you know, other types of programming throughout the city, but it's also federal funding. It's also state funding. And so that's a critical, you know, piece of the puzzle that is under threat right now. And so, you know, it behooves, you know, those in our communities in the city of Chicago, throughout the state of Illinois, and cities across the country to recognize, you know, the very real threat that's coming from the federal government in undermining our ability to keep our community safe, to engage our youth, to ensure that people have the resources they need to live their day-to-day lives the best that they can.
Thank you. And how close are you to making a decision on both the CTA and the Board of Education or a superintendent?
Yeah, so look, I made this clear from the very beginning, particularly with our public schools. We're going to transform our schools in the city of Chicago, and we're going to make it work for all of the city. Having a leader that reflects the values that I ran on, making sure that our class sizes are managed, making sure that we have support social emotional support, libraries, librarians, all the things that I ran on, and that was secured in this latest teacher's contract. You know, as far as a leader, again, someone who understands that value. Now, there's a process that the Board of Education is going through, and I respect that process as they accept applicants. You know, ultimately, you know, I'm going to have some recommendation of what the best leader looks like, and what the best leader reflects in terms of our values. And I do appreciate the hard work that the Board of Education is going through right now.
And CTA.
Oh, yes, and with CTA, look, the same thing. We're doing really good work in Springfield right now to ensure that our city receives its, you know, fair, equitable distribution of resources. You know, our ridership is up 300 million riders last year. We're hiring more people. We're working to make it a safer space. That person or persons that, you know, we put forward for the board to be able to reflect on. Again, someone who understands the value of our public transportation system, someone who understands who has the strength and the capability of running a large system, but someone who also has a deeper personal connection to our transportation system. Those are high qualities that I do value, and within the next, you know, few weeks or so, pretty confident that we'll have that person.
Speaking of CTA, while John Roberson is sitting next to you, let's talk about education. Go back to that since we're on it. CEO Martinez presented a budget last week that puts the CPS deficit at $229 million, but he assumed an additional $300 million would come from either Springfield or the city. So the CEO basically presented a budget that was $500 million short. How should the board make up the difference? And Martinez thinks that the schools can tap the TIF well again. Is that something you would support?
Well, let's just go back to what your initial statement indicated, that the CEO presented a budget with making assumptions. It's the same budget that he presented last year. It's the most irresponsible budget presentation that an executive can ever present. It's just irresponsible. It's why we're in this predicament right now. Just lacked vision. It was just a derelict failure, quite frankly, of his duty. So what the board will be tasked with is working with my office, working with our labor partners, but also working with our partners in Springfield around how we can have a sustainable school district that reflects the values of all of the residents of this city. You know, when I presented a budget, I didn't present a budget, you know, with the expectation of other entities necessarily, right? You actually have to be able to have some sort of proof positive. And that's just, you know, unfortunate to present a budget with that assumption. So we're going to work hand in hand with the board members as well as our partners in labor and the state to find a pathway that's reasonable, that ensures that our schools are not harmed.
Back to the DOJ investigation. You know, one thing people say about you is wherever you go, you sound like you're talking to your base. Which would basically be the black church, right? In this environment where Washington is scrutinizing Chicago, do you agree or regret that it always sounds like you're talking to black voters, and so sometimes your message gets lost in translation for a broader audience?
Yeah. So I've talked about having the lowest amount of homicides in April. The lowest amount since 1962. That speaks to the entire city of Chicago. Robberies being down. That's all of Chicago. Building affordable homes. That's all of Chicago. You know, our mental and behavioral health support services for our care program, the expansion of mental and behavioral health. It's all of Chicago. When I talk about building affordable homes and building homes downtown, you can make an assumption that I'm only talking about one particular race as well. We know who concentrates in that particular part of the city. So, look, it sounds like to me that people tune in to what they want to tune into. Because the fact of the matter is that I've shown up for this entire city. When we put $1 billion in our public school system, We don't cherry pick. Now, that benefits all of our children. There's going to be class sizes that are going to be smaller in every section of the city. We're building green social housing. Some folks felt that it didn't concentrate enough in Black Chicago, right? When we're talking about, a Bears stadium, that's the benefit with these economic opportunities for all of Chicago. When Beyonce hits me up and she wants to come to Chicago, she's going to perform for everybody. So, this notion that somehow what it sounds like, let's just look at the facts. We have the most diverse administration in the history of this city. We've invested so much in environmental justice. Everybody cares about that. And so I'll just end with this. Why wouldn't I speak to Black Chicago? Why wouldn't I? Black Chicago and Black people in America have borne the brunt of the type of policies and the maneuvering and the humiliating tactics that are coming from the federal government right now. It's not a secret. Who is going to be mad at the fact that we have to prioritize spaces in the city that have been harmed the most? Everybody agrees with that. Now, and if you don't agree with that, then that's a prerogative that they'll get to own. But we don't have to apologize for being concerned about the residents of this city who have borne the brunt of school closures. Think about unemployment in this city, where it is mostly concentrated. Think about violence, where it's mostly concentrated. It would be shameful if I were to repeat the sins of those who have been in this position before, because they did not speak enough to Black Chicago. It's why the conditions have worsened. And under my watch and under my administration, we're going to make those critical investments to ensure that every single person in the city of Chicago benefits from my administration. And we know that a rising tide will lift all boats.
Hey, Mayor. So today in zoning committee, the ANI project just north of Bally's, it's been stalled for a year. It's coming up for a vote. They do not have a labor peace agreement with SEIU. That's why it's not gotten a vote for a year. Do you think it should be approved before they have a LPA with SEIU?
Well, look, I will say this, as the most pro-worker city in America, of course, labor peace has to be the priority. I understand that there are many different dynamics and elements that are being bantered about right now, but labor peace is important to me.
Do you think without that it should get voted down in either committee or city council tomorrow?
My preference is that there's labor peace before anything moves in this city.
And then separately, obviously the Bears, you met with Kevin Warren last week. He said he's moving on. Can you share more of what your reaction was to that last week, and are you disappointed that we've reached this point?
Well, I will say there's a long way to go still, and there's, ample evidence that, my desires for the Bears to stay in the city of Chicago. There are certain things that are beyond my control. What they are looking for in terms of state support from a particular revenue source that is only designed to build stadiums, that's something that the Bears have to continue to work hard to make that case. That's been my position from the very beginning. The Bears do have a level of responsibility to make the case in Springfield. Look, if Springfield doesn't have an appetite, that's something that, the Bears, have to consider. And though there's, again, a long way to go, there's no person in politics in this state that has worked as hard as I have to help support the Bears' effort to stay in Chicago. And the state of Illinois has a responsibility and a role to play. And, the Bears have to, like they made the case with me, they have to make the case with the state of Illinois in order for a package to make sense for them.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
Circling back on curfew, I'm sure that your administration...
There it is. There.
Okay. Circling back on curfew, I'm sure your administration has heard some of the same concerns that we have heard from youth, that yes, they are concerned about this idea of a snap curfew, but also going downtown, there are a lot of public and private spaces that have early curfews, such as 6 p.m., 8 p.m., some of those being Navy Pier, Maggie Daley Park, Millennium Park. The administration has the power, whether it's through specific policy initiatives or collaborating with the other powers that be, to change that. Is that something that your administration is actively pursuing? And if not, why?
Well, I'm always open to having having conversations and collaborating. Here's what my focus has been primarily, has been to make sure that we prevent these large gatherings from taking place so that we can keep people safe. That's what my main priority has been, and the type of curfew enactment that was initially proposed, where it was only concentrated in one particular neighborhood. I spoke very candidly about my opposition against that form, because it's just no evidence that it works. Look, I know that there are many different machinations of spaces within the downtown limits. Anyone who wants to have a robust conversation about those spaces, I'm open to it.
You've said in the past that you're not for curfews at Millennium Park, especially it's against your administration's prerogative. I'm curious, are we going to see changes to that? It's something that youth have consistently said, we want to be able to go to the special events at Millennium Park, but I don't have anyone that's 21 years or older to take me.
Yeah, look, I know that there are a number of people who have raised that, and as I said, I'm open to those conversations. Well, who's going to? As I would say, please don't make Craig fall. You know,
somebody has to come help me get up. He's fallen and he can't get up. Mayor, if we can go back to the DOJ thing, how would you say that race factors into your hiring decisions as you're trying to build your administration?
Well, look, I do believe that there is a tremendous amount of value to make sure that we have qualified, talented people who work in government. I feel blessed that, our budget director, who just happens to have a JD, right? It's pretty fascinating. I mean, it's not a requirement of the job, but she brings that element. When I think about someone like Angela Tovar, who is, leading up our, environmental department, her skill set and her reputation around the globe is just absolutely, it's just amazing, quite frankly. What I look for people who are competent, right? People who are collaborative and people who are compassionate. Is there a value to make sure that people who are closest to neighborhoods bring that level of expertise? There's value in that. Of course there's value in diversity, and we should never shy away from that. Unfortunately, I believe the reason why we've had so many ailments that we've had to address is because there's been a hyper concentration of a particular group or gender that has dominated politics. Right? Once upon a time, I think mayoral administrations were probably 70% white. Now, when I think about what's happening at the federal level, let's just focus there for a second. One black person in his entire administration. Now, I don't know if this is a correlation, but only having one black person in his administration and individuals that I would question their qualifications, you're running up major departments and your background is wrestling. I mean, and maybe there's something valuable there, but we're not seeing it, right? So as the Trump administration moves away from diversity, you're seeing more chaos. As my administration embraces diversity, you're seeing us build the safest, most affordable city in America. So look, I look at a variety of things, and to have an administration that reflects not just the values of our city, but it shows up even in their backgrounds. I think that there's value to that, and I'm very proud of the fact that we're a growing administration that reflects the city of Chicago.
Your administration was getting beat up, and prior administrations too, for that matter, over crime. And now the crime is going down. Do you see this as the Trump administration looking for some other reason to, take a shot at Chicago?
Look, when you are the world champion of the world, there's going to be multiple reasons why people are going to want to battle you. That just comes with the terrible. When you're the greatest freaking city in the world, there are going to be individuals who are going to want to challenge that, right? Look, my focus is, again, building the safest, most affordable city in America, big city in America. And we're not patting ourselves on the back. I mean, we're working hard every single day. There's a lot more work for us to do. And again, as I said earlier, people elected me 2 years ago, and I'm humbled by this, to address all of the historic wrongs that we've had to face, whether it's environmental justice, housing, education, business and economic development, diversity in contracts, and people want me to address all of it. And that, to me, shows that there's a level of confidence that what we did before, we're rejecting, and we can't go backwards. We have to move forward. So, like, you know, the Trump administration showing animus towards a working class city, it just makes sense because of who he's aligned with. He's aligned with the ultra rich. It's the same group of people who have formed a $10 million PAC against my administration. And they're trying to intimidate working people, and I'm not going to stand for that, right? And it is this generation's turn and responsibility to make sure that we transform government. It is our moment, and we're going to take full advantage of this moment to ensure that posterity will be able to look back in this moment and say thank you to all of us who stood firm in the midst of tremendous adversity to ensure that we have an inclusive society that works for everyone.
Okay, just a brief follow-up.
Sure.
Will the DOJ find any discriminatory practices in how people are hired?
You know, again, the approach is an approach that speaks to competency. That's it. This would be unprecedented. But if you just look at the way the Trump administration is reflecting right now, I'm calling on the Department of Justice to investigate the Trump administration and its discriminatory practices in their hiring.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
Let's circle back to Bears Stadium. Is the city still actively engaged with the Chicago Bears in negotiations over a lakefront or a Michael Reese site?
Well, we have not closed the door on it. You know, as I said to the other questions, my administration will always remain open to having conversations. We had a conversation a week or so ago about the Bears not getting the support that they needed from the state of Illinois, and it has, you know, placed them in a position where they have to figure out how to move forward. But my door will never close to this. I want the Bears to stay in Chicago.
And just one Pope Leo question. Have you officially extended an invitation for him to come visit the city, and do you plan to do so?
I will. You know, I had a good conversation with the Cardinal, and I first of all, I just think I am still elated, right, that the Pope is from Chicago. And it's one of those things where, you know, in his official capacity, it's good to have, you know, a Pope who's from Chicago, because now officially, if you put ketchup on a hot dog, it would be a cardinal sin. All right, thank you all. I've been waiting to use that. I tried it with my son. He told me not to, but.
Mayor Johnson.
Yeah.
Please turn the mic on. Thank you. Real Chicagoans woke up this morning relieved that the Department of Justice is finally investigating your race hustle. As someone who grew up on the south side of Chicago, I've heard a lot of race hustlers in my life, trust me. But they were usually marching around outside of City Hall, which is what makes this so embarrassing and dangerous. Very, very dangerous to the city of Chicago.
Okay, we need the question.
I'm more than happy to ask this question. It's long overdue. For over a year, real Chicagoans, white and black, have been telling me that your black power rhetoric is bringing the city backwards from a place that
we need the question.
Had overcome. You want the question?
Please.
Real Chicagoans want to know, why are you a racist?
Well, you know, first of all, I reject the idea and the premise that somehow that's an actual legitimate question.
You want that?
All right, we're going to go to the next one. Alice?
The next question, my follow-up question is a businessman, Robert Gomez, had his riverfront restaurant license yanked. You said that the reason you hire black people is because they're the most generous race on the planet. His riverfront restaurant license was yanked and given to a black restaurateur. That has once again reinforced the belief among real Chicagoans,
Okay.
white and black
We need
and
the
Mexican,
question.
that you are a racist. What do you say to those people?
Again, I reject the premise that somehow that your question has any legitimacy. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. We'll go to
Pass the mic
Alice.
there. Thank you.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
Looking more broadly, the Trump administration has increasingly been citing the Civil Rights Act to investigate whether white people are being discriminated against, including in this latest DOJ probe. What do you make of this legal interpretation, and does it being used against Chicago concern you?
Well, again, the diversity that the city of Chicago represents is something that reflects, quite frankly, the soul of America, right? We are the quintessential example of what it means to be a global city. And it's a proud legacy. How this president is using his power or attempting to use his power is using it to divide people. And look, I'm not going to stand for it. Look, I get it. It's a conversation that people get provocated by. But the fact of the matter is, as I continue to work in collaboration to build the safest, most affordable big city in America, that's what my focus is on. I can't control, the tyrannical proclivities of this administration. I try not to get distracted by that, and I don't want the people of Chicago to get distracted by it either. Think about what we're building in our city, where we've seen the occupancy rate increase downtown, that $20 billion of tourism that is moving through our coffers, that population growth continues to happen. We're creating safer spaces for our young people. Now look, I'm not saying that everything is perfect. What I'm saying is that we're moving in the right direction. The safest, most affordable big city in America. People made a decision 2 years ago around who is going to work the hardest to keep us safe. And I made a commitment that I would work harder than anyone. Homicides are down, shootings are down, carjackings are down, robberies are down, investments continue to go up. $11 billion in new investments last year, $8 billion so far this year. The process through planning, the Planning Commission, where we're moving the business activity through the city of Chicago much faster, 178 something days down to 78 days. With our budget director, we put together a working group to respond to the financial challenges that people are experiencing all over the country. We had our first gathering on Saturday. Every single representative was there: labor, business, community. People like, I won't name all the names, but the people there that recognize that it's going to take all of us. It is this generation's opportunity in turn to come together collectively to transform our city, and that's exactly what we're doing.
And have you reached out to state lawmakers who represent Chicago about the Bears? And do you get the sense that they're adamant about wanting to keep the team in the city?
Well, look, I have to take people at their word, right? I mean, I've had multiple conversations over the last couple of years, around this stadium. And again, our team worked hard to do our part to put the Bears in the best possible position to stay at the lakefront. That's what they want. That's what I want. I know that there are people in the General Assembly who want the same thing. The question is, will the state use the dollars that are designed for stadiums to be built? Will they use those dollars? That's a decision that they'll have to make. And if they're not committed to doing that, then the Bears obviously will have to make other considerations. The door remains open, and, there's a long way to go still here, but I trust that the Bears are going to continue to have conversations with members of the General Assembly as well as the governor to make their case around how the state of Illinois can help support the collective effort to keep the Bears in Chicago.
But are you going to actively lobby lawmakers for or against the Arlington Heights incentive package?
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I'm clear. Are you not clear what my position is?
No, do you plan to more actively lobby?
I mean, I've done everything that I possibly could do. I've done my part. At this point, it's if the state of Illinois wants to keep the Bears in the city of Chicago, the football is in their. Hold on, let me stand in the court. The ball is on the side of the field. You get the point. All right, I try. There's my stand-up routine just ended there. Yeah, I know. Oh, good one. You hear that, Craig? He said I fumbled that one. That's good. All right.
Good morning. Would you be open to any deal that would allow the Bears to break their Soldier Field lease?
That hasn't come up. It hasn't come up. It's a good question.
This might be for the budget director as well here, but another $62 million in police misconduct settlements moved forward in the Finance Committee yesterday. How big of an issue is the overspending and the generally massive spending on police misconduct settlements? How big of an issue is that?
Well, just before our budget director weighs in, let me just say I think there's a great deal of frustration that because of failures that we're dealing with just a backload of cases. We don't have control over those level of backloads of cases. It is a frustrating element that, my administration, just like every other issue that we've had to respond to, where people have kicked the can down the road, and we're not doing that. And we're literally working to pick. These bad analogies are just going to get worse. Pick the can. I don't even know how to use that analogy, but the point is we're not going to kick the can down the road anymore. So, as far as that level of frustration, that's something that all of City Council, as well as me and many other people in this city, that we had brutality that existed. It was ignored when people came forward. It was covered up. I mean, we can go down multiple cases, whether it's the shooting of a 17-year-old black boy multiple times, 16 shots, and somehow it never made it to the light of day. There are multiple cases in which police brutality occurred, 80s and the 90s, that we are dealing with today. Annette?
Obviously, it's frustrating, right? So we're not only dealing with, legacy old cases, but we're also dealing with the backlog due to the closing of courts during the pandemic. So all of that is converging at the same time. And the mayor's right, we're not kicking the can down the road. We are, dealing with the situation in the hand that we've been dealt. I think one of the things to look at is how are we emerging from these legacy cases? Are we implementing constitutional policing? Are we seeing less cases being brought against the city of Chicago based on the conduct that police officers are currently performing? And so I think, we have no ability but to deal with the situation that, we've been handed as it relates to legacy cases. And we're not the only city that's dealing with this. I think, the city of Los Angeles just came out with their budget not too long ago, and they named the skyrocketing cost of settlements and judgments as one of the drivers of their $1 billion budget deficit as well. This is happening across the country, and I think it behooves administrations that are currently in place to put policies and practices to ensure that we are not infringing upon the rights of everyday citizens.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
So you mentioned that part of the strategy to keep Chicago safe during the summer is working with youth groups in the communities. And I would like to know which groups are you working with in the Latino communities, such as Little Village or Back of the Yards?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's not just about youth groups, organizations. It's really about the full force of government. It's about our business community, the philanthropic, community. And so there are a number of organizations that, we are working with, particularly around CVI. And, many of these organizations touch multiple communities like Little Village. But as far as some of the specific communities, I don't know, Kahari, do you have those? And we can make sure you get those organizations.
Yes, in Little Village, we're working with T98, which is the Alliance 98. They are the funded organization that provides safe spaces, opportunities in Little Village.
Last question?
Is that all? Okay. Yep.
I apologize, Mayor. I had to step out briefly. So
okay.
If I'm asking you a question you've already answered, I apologize.
It's okay.
In hindsight, given this DOJ probe, the rhetoric used to tout the diversity in your administration, would you change anything that you said in light of perhaps Asian Americans, Native Americans, or Latino Americans who might not feel reflected in the black leadership positions that you talked about. Given the criticism, is there anything in your rhetoric that you would change in hindsight?
So that's a great question. So just think about the question that was just asked by your colleague. She specifically asked about Latino representation. And so we gave a specific response to Latino representation.
I guess I'm speaking specifically about the comments made over.
What I'm saying is the question was a specific question that was asked about black contracts in particular. Look, I get those questions all the time, you all. I do. People ask me about LGBTQ plus representation. They ask me about women representation. Can I just be absolute honest here? I know I do this every single press availability. I'm going to make my communications director cringe. This is a quintessential example of the type of divisiveness that this president wants us to have. Do you know how many times I've spoken of the diversity of my administration? So I'm going to say Cristina Pacion Zayas, Beatriz Ponce de Leon, Cynthia Soto, Angela Tovar, Commissioner Andrade, Commissioner Capafali, Executive Director Frank Velez, Chancellor Salgado, CEO and General Superintendent Ramirez Rosa. Is that offensive?
Not at all.
Not
I
at
was
all,
just
right? So
asking,
what I'm just
given
simply
the
saying is,
criticism,
but is that offensive though? That I just mentioned leaders within my administration that all are part of the Latinx community. Why would that be offensive to anyone? When we have 8% Asian Americans, do you know what the representation of Asian Americans were in administrations prior? You don't know, do you?
Not off the top of my head. No, I don't.
No one has ever asked. But we still made it a purpose to make sure that there was good representation. Look, the city of Chicago has suffered from a great deal of pain because of the political and the racial dividing lines that have existed in this city for a long time. I'm going to break those lines. I am. I'm going to show up for the Latino community. We're going to show up for Asian Americans. We're going to show up for black folks in this city. We're going to show up for the LGBTQ plus community. Any group that has been marginalized, that have suffered under tyranny and oppression, we're going to show up for them. We're not going to be intimidated by the tyranny that's coming from the federal government. The diversity of our city is our strength. And so when people ask me specific questions about their particular communities, they're going to want to know that there's some assurance within my administration that I'm going to show up for that particular community. And do you know why they ask those questions? Because other administrations have failed. And I'm giving people some confidence that I'm not going to ignore any particular group, especially groups that have been marginalized. And so, of course, the president wants to highlight the fact that I mentioned those names. So guess what? I hope that he listened when I said Capafali, Ponce de Leon, Velez. Those are powerful surnames, just like Johnson, Williams, and Jenkins. And that's the celebration of who we are as a city. And I'm not going to be intimidated or allow the failures of the past to dictate how we move forward. This is this generation's opportunity to get something right. And so when Cesar Chavez and when Reverend Jackson were fighting collectively to ensure that brown and black people can be empowered, and they got us as far as they could get us, now it's going to take a collective response from all of us to ensure that no one is left behind in this city. And that's why I'm very grateful that I'm in a position to build the safest, most affordable big city in America. And regardless of your surname, you get to find sanctity here in this beloved city. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. And don't steal my joke. That's mine's original.